Yeah, very
Well
busy.
done.
It was good.
That was a very busy trailer.
Yes, Grayson, that was his name. Thank you, Mark F. Thank you.
ご紹介いただきたいということでございます。ですが、はい。最初にですね、はい、ちょっとまあちょっと喋りだけなんですけど、お話ししておきたいことがあってですね、まあ大きく言うと2つあって。
And of course, there's content they couldn't put into the trailer.
Well, yeah.
That's not the whole patch, guys. Confirmed from Yoshi P.
I'd be happy with it.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, their trailers were much longer because it was not just highlighting the exciting parts, but it was like, now let's list off and show the big the ocean fishing for a little while. And so it's like they were much longer, and now since then they've kind of just condensed it down to the exciting pieces, and then I guess they let YouTubers and streamers like kind of cover like, oh, this is what's also coming, which seems to be, I guess, the natural evolution of it.
Oh, he's gonna talk about third-party tools being used in the game.
I was just gonna say that there's been a lot of
Oh, I don't know if they'd talk about this publicly.
So they're gonna start with screenshot mods first.
See you, Mark. Yeah, be sure to hit that subscribe button, guys, over here on Work to Play. And thanks so much for the likes, the 8 likes, guys. Appreciate that.
Wow, I'm surprised they're really addressing it right now.
Well, this is the first major event since the last round of controversy.
Right.
Well, and also kind of the biggest thing in which that it wasn't actually being talked about in game, but it was with streaming and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow! So people are using mods to take lewd screenshots in the game.
I already knew about this.
And they were saying that Yoshi P doesn't have a stance. I assume this is where he says,
"Stop.
Yeah, I have a stance." Let me make this extremely explicit.
Well, it's a teen-rated game, and that's like like if it was an M-rated game, it'd probably be a different stance because, like, when people go and see,
right.
Like these, like, whoa, is that in the game? Like, what the hell?
It isn't allowed.
Yeah.
like when people said that they didn't have an official stance banning the brothels in personal player housing, and they're like, I asked them that question, and they didn't dignify it with a response, and it's like,
you shouldn't
that's
have
because you were
to.
at a press event, and that's a wasted question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is it 2020 and people still like feel like, wait, let's waste a question, just burn it.
Well, it's from that reporter that like hasn't ever played the game. They just straight up like, what's the most inflammatory thing I can think of?
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna burn my question on.
You are absolutely right, Winchester. I want to see more Hildebrand too. I'm almost to Heavensward Hildebrand. I finally got to it, and it's so much fun. And it would be a really nice contrast to the story in SHB. It would be nice to have something humorous. You're absolutely right.
All right, so depending on the content you publish, it goes beyond just a penalty from Square Enix. In some countries, the screenshots we're seeing are against the law.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but
じゃあモッドって何かっていうと、例えば特定のゲームがあって、誰かがまあこのゲームの中に存在していない。
I mean, what starts as a butt slider meme can spiral out of control. For people that don't see that as like where that meme should stop.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, let's go out and make mods that let us have much more control over what we see.
I wonder what the question though would be on terms of like somebody just photoshopping an image to make it lewd.
I wonder if like where people are actually publishing it. You know, like
obviously not just to their own personal
right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Background on their computer, because Yoshi P's getting shown these.
Yeah.
Oh, do you approve of this? No, I didn't want to see that. So they don't like being asked what game are these screenshots being taken in.
Right.
I mean, yeah. And the thing is too, you're gonna have it with every game. I think it's even bigger for like ESO, like Skyrim type. I mean, there are mods within the game.
I mean, you can just do it in WoW, where most of the character models are not attractive enough to even remotely like do what you want. They don't have enough polygons. When they do, they have weird faces. There's your answer.
But I mean, I can see you just doing it and then not publishing it, but I can also see people being proud of their work. But if it's lewd enough to actually get the attention of someone to bring it up in a live letter, then you probably shouldn't post it. But then again, at the same time, it makes me question, like, artwork too. Like, what if you take the NPCs in game and you draw something lewd that's, you know, still like classy and beautiful? Is that the same thing because you're using the NPCs that they've created and you're publishing it? Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. All right, I just shared it out on a post on the channel. Mr. Poultry, excuse me, Mr. P. We've got this is our live stream channel. Like, we're going forward like live content here. Yeah, they want to avoid being asked what game are these screenshots taken in. Change the data. Don't let them do this. So I ask you, please refrain from using mods.
Well, I mean, it could be... People could get really misinformed just from, like, not even lewd screenshots, from like, shaders, too, and expect even more than what they would see in-game, almost like false advertising.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think
but I
most
might
of the
also
streamers that do it are pretty good about talking about it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like Ethos uses a shader, but he always mentions that it's a shader.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, for example, something that wouldn't necessarily be lewd, but would lead somebody to wonder about what game it's in, and then play the game under false pretenses, and might bring it up to.
Well, they even updated their terms of service when it comes to like content creation for the game and stuff, and they even have it where they want the music and the sound for whatever the content that's being shown to be that. So it's not like you're sitting here listening to some like song and you're like, and somebody's coming and playing the dungeon and being like, whoa, like it's, you know, this sounds completely different, you know, to that point where I think they've gone and updated those so they can actually have more enforcement, you know, if needed, to kind of pull that trigger.
I guess what's also kind of amazing too is how important screenshots are to people in 14. Like, it's kind of amazing. Like, I've never seen it before in any other game, and I've never seen so many options, like regardless of any mods or using shaders or whatever. I've never seen so many options in a game to, you're doing an action, you can stop that action, you can go from a different angle, you can change the lighting. Like, it's amazing. Like, some of the screenshots I've seen without even having to use mods are ridiculous.
So now they're going to want to talk about third-party tools.
Yep.
The joke in my mind are like, are they considering streamers third-party tools?
Don't be a tool.
Don't be a tool.
I don't know if that translates, but... Alright, so they're aware that as the player base increases, that this needs to be talked about, because we have players from a different background now. As we have people coming in from everything from not having played games, so they don't have an expectation of what you should and shouldn't do, and why things shouldn't be a certain way, to people like coming from games that are more open with mod support, which is pretty much all of them. Pretty much every game has a more open mod policy than 14.
Yeah.
It actually really surprises me how much of a hot topic this is, and how much the pop that actually plays 14 is very split, especially just with like not even just third-party tools, but like DPS meters specifically. It actually really surprised me how many people are like, I know it's against the TOS, but I wasn't expecting the resounding population to either be for or against, and that's it. Like, no middle ground. It really, really surprises me.
So they're saying it's against TOS to use third-party tools, so please refrain from using them. There can be consequences like penalties to your account, and people keep asking things. Well, what about apps like Discord? Being in voice chat is technically using a third-party tool, which is always like people always have to take it like one step too far.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, don't drive your car drunk, and they're like, well, I drove my car on coffee, and that's a drug. It's like, come on, man. Like,
well, yeah, and he doesn't. They don't want to build in voice chat to the game.
I wouldn't want to either.
Yeah, they want people to feel safe and comfortable playing.
Managed by a third party.
Yeah,
I don't think you want that in game, and I think the in-game tools tend to lack in quality, so you're getting all the bad and none of the good.
who's in here asking about Discord? Jeez Louise.
How many voice chats have we gone through over the years?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, what was the first one you remember? I think Ventrilo was first, right?
Ventrilo and TeamSpeak are the ones I remember. I don't remember which I actually used first.
And at the same time, it's not even like
And then it was
the
Mumble for a
definition
while.
of a third-party tool that they're talking about is something that changes your experience in game, something that messes with the tools in game. It's not a voice chat.
They're saying it's hard to draw the line between the tools they accept and the ones that break the game. So,
But see, that's where the issue is too. Saying something like that kind of, I mean, I know that they're trying to be very, for lack of a better term, political about the response that they're giving, and trying to like appease certain aspects of the question and let people know what they want. But at the same time, when you say, well, it's hard to draw a line, that kind of gives a bad impression, because a lot of people are going to say, well, if I do this, will I get in trouble for this? If I do this, will I get in trouble for this? And then when they actually do get in trouble, they'll be like, oh, so that's the line, you know?
Yeah, so I had to take a class in college called professional practice, and it basically prepares you for the legal side of the profession that I was studying to go into. And one of the things they talk about is scope, and how like you should never increase your scope. So the example was architectural, and so they say, I build a house for you, and you end up liking that house, and you go on to build 10 more houses with me. You're a small developer, and the first house has a roof leak, and I think that it's a bad installation by the contractor. The contractor thinks that you've done a bad job maintaining it, and you think that I did a bad job designing it. So naturally, it goes to court, and regardless of who's wrong, we all have to represent ourselves. And in the process of preparing for court, you're asking me for different documents and things like that by email. And I get frustrated in email, and I write to you, my buildings don't leak, right? So I draw a hard line. That's what people are asking Square Enix to do here. I draw a hard line. This is against, this is not. The problem is that the way that can be interpreted is, now that that's in writing, now that they've officially stated that, now, while that building may not be my fault, if any of your other buildings leak, that is my fault, because I just said they cannot leak. I just drew a hard line on something that I can't actually control. So you need to be really careful with things like that. So people can say it's political all day long, but if they draw a line and they say this type of add-on is against and this type is not, somebody will go make the most egregious add-on they can that sits just right here, and then their hands are tied. There's nothing they can do because it didn't break the rules, even though it's not in the spirit. So it's easier to just say, like, don't be a dick, and then just don't define it any further than that.
The spirit versus the letter of the law. That's
right.
Yeah.
And I get it. I do. I'm just saying that I feel like at the same time, with the way the internet is and the way people are, that it's almost fodder for people to see, like, to say, well, Square isn't giving us a real guideline again, so who knows, you know, type of thing. Not necessarily that it's my
Winchester says this, I'm going to get y'all's thought, is the ubiquity of things like damage meters is part of what made other MMOs so toxic. What do you guys think about that?
I feel like it's a really touchy subject, because in my mind, I actually did a video about this when I played WoW and I was raid leading, it was hard because, especially if you were on, and everybody will say, you know, if everybody's doing what they're supposed to, you don't need to really worry about DPS. Which for me is like, when I was playing just for like this certain instance, like if we were on a boss that had a hard DPS check and you had somebody who really didn't master their class and they were constantly falling short, they were that weak link that was making it so that you could not down that boss. And I know it sounds bad to say, and again, it's very touchy. So me as a raid leader, I would say, okay, you know, you're going to have to sit until you figure out what the hole is in your rotation, because progression isn't where you should be figuring out that hole to me. Right. That's where you should be learning to fight. And so to me, using a meter in that sense and to make your play style better isn't bad. Or like using, I was a big advocate of Warcraft logs, where when I played Fire Mage, I'd be like, okay, I know 3 different Fire Mages that are a million times better with me. I'm gonna check out, you know, their fight and their timing and see what abilities they're using in different sequences, or if their opener is different, or if they pot differently. So in that sense, I don't think it's bad, but I can see it being toxic if you shame people. And again, I know that people say, you know, you can do the content without having to worry about that. I totally get it. Yeah. But from my
there's some stuff in the translation, Chris. Will you start with the DPS meter simply and the numbers?
Yeah, so they said DPS meter simply adding the numbers that are shown in your battle logs. It isn't accessing game files. So I get asked, what if I just use a calculator instead? And as an engineer himself, he understands that you could just write an Excel macro to read the log file after the fight is done. But I'm taking a stance on this. We won't know what you have installed on your PC, but third-party tools are against the TOS. Gray zone is still gray, but I'm asking you not to use these tools. We won't be adding an official parser. It will turn everything toxic. We won't implement one ever.
Which I actually think is a really good way to talk about it and go about it. Honestly,
I can tell you my stance on, I don't care or need one in live. I would love to see my own personal stats rated up against myself. You know, at the end of the content, like disbanded, you know, oh, how did I do? Or an ability for me to kind of go back and look if I'm improving or not. Like literally, like I don't even like, what was the number? It doesn't matter. But I got better.
Statics may ask you to seek a screenshot of that to be allowed into their static, and I don't disagree with that, because to be let into, if you don't like that about them, you're not going to like their personality anyway. Like that should be a red flag. If they're asking for that and that makes you uncomfortable, even if they said, okay, let's overlook it for you and let you in, you're not going to like the level of aggression that static is going to operate at. And that's
right.
You have
from the get-go, that's a static that doesn't want what you want.
You have the statics are already doing that. You know, so it's like if you're, that's where like the game is a game of haves and have-nots, because it's like, okay, you got to have tools, or you got to go. That's why when we were trying to do Savage and get that group together, we would warm up with the targeting dummies, because I'm sorry, like if you're sitting here coming at and you can't, and you're at 20% on the fight, you're asking somebody to make up 20% of what the game thinks you should be able to do. Right. And it's a whole different mindset. That's why it's like, I don't care for that content from a creation and streaming perspective, because I'd rather just play with people and have fun.
So in the Twitch chat, somebody said in the official Twitch chat, legitimate question, why have you spent over half an hour on this topic? Nothing has changed in your stance. This is redundant information. They have stated this so many times and it still comes up. The number of times they have to clarify, quote unquote, redundant information. I mean, we have all these new people. So there are people who this is their first live layer that this is being talked about. Or there are people who they've been around but they've never played at that level, and maybe this tier is the first tier they've cared about Ultimate, and so these tools didn't matter when they were just running Fates, but now that they're trying Ultimate, tools like this become incredibly important. So they're saying, Yoshi said, if you call out somebody for low DPS, the problem isn't even using a third-party tool, it's harassment. But then he also said, like, people might say it's less efficient, but I don't think a game is fun if all it does is push for efficiency. I think that one's a little bit stretching further, because that's wanting a parser is not saying that the entire game comes down to that parser, right? you still need to understand mechanics. You still need to understand class rotations. You still need to understand, you know, roles. Like even just when we use a limit break, like there's still all these other things. And people can like a game and want to be efficient at it. Those are not exclusive to one another.
And I think the idea, going back to the comment about spending so much time on it, is I think that the idea in their mind is that, well, if our points aren't getting across to you via text, maybe using a different medium. You know, maybe if you hear it straight from what I'm saying, then you'll understand. But I still think it's a very great line. And again, I'm really surprised at how split people are, because again, to me, I don't think it's that big of a thing. Like, I don't know.
I don't want a real-time
I've never
parser.
had an issue with them ever, you know?
But I wouldn't mind something like PvP where it pops up at the end. If they want to bind it to just my own information, that's fine. I would be perfectly content with that. If that is going to be the case, it would be neat if they would let me do it across all my jobs, so I could see if my Black Mage outperforms my Bard.
Yeah. I think that what this means, though, if they're going to make it less gray, is that I would say if you're streaming and your content creation, don't show the DPS meter. You know, like you have it up if you want, if you need, just don't have it like on your stream, because it creates this sense of, can I or can I not? You know, and from our perspective, you know, within this community, it's like, well, why does Work the Game get to have one, or why does so and so get? Oh, it's because of blah. It's like, no, we don't need that in the community. So I think my takeaway would be
a warning.
Yeah, my takeaway is just, guys, let's not make it gray. Let's just not show it. Just don't show it. You know, don't talk about Fight Club. Now I'm gonna make an appeal, guys. If you guys haven't subscribed over here to Work to Play, we hope that you hit that subscribe button and join us over here. You'll find our live content over here going forward, live letters and more. So we hope that you do. This will be a way that you can, you know, if you're not interested in what we're streaming at the moment, you won't have to see and worry about that as a part of just being a part of Work the Game. So
Here's
thanks.
a big statement.
Oh, another one.
Yep. We cannot do anything. If people have a little window on their screen showing ACT, we do not want to scan your computer for the software you have installed. That's against the law anyway. There are additional plugins for ACT that influence gameplay a lot. This is breaking game balance and is target for more severe penalties. For example, during the world first race for Alex Ultimate, there was a tool used to instantly replace waymarks during the fight. I'm sure some of you have seen that. And then he was like, oh, that's the first time I learned a tool like that exists. So I assume that content creation is going to start getting hit for this. I assume they're going to start saying to creators, send an email to all your influencers, because you don't want to just kick off the little bit of content creation we have around this game. But they need to reach out to the big content creators and say, hey, I see you stream this game 40 hours a week with ACT on. Knock it off.
Yeah.
If that's the stance they're going to take, don't just have a sweeping ban where we go to find Final Fantasy one week and it's not showing on Twitch because they've banned so many
Everybody
that it's so far down the list because there's only 3 people live.
I mean, I guess my stance on it is just, I don't care if people have it, I don't care if people use it, just don't be rude about it, I guess. Don't call out people by in-game name on stream if you're a content creator, which is why I always liked Skada when, like, if you were playing, you know, WoW, or I don't know if there's any other thing that Skada you can use Skada for, but that you could like put nicknames on there. So if you did have it up on your screen, you know, you had a nickname. Obviously that wouldn't work for here because even having it up technically with what they're talking about is against TOS.
Yeah.
I think you could do it with details too, where you could change the person's name.
I honestly, so I used to have mindset back in the day. I don't know if they still have settings like this, but when I rated a lot, I had mindset that when it was in combat, take the names off. I just want to see where the numbers are, and I can see from class colors. Okay, the druids are rising to the top, and like that's enough information for me. And then afterwards, because like I don't have time to call out an individual person when I was helping lead raids. We all like you said, if this is where you think you're gonna learn how to play, we already have an enormous problem.
Right.
We did not coordinate this many people coming together on raid night so that you could learn. You need to show up to raid prepared. That means you need to have the materials you need. You need to know your class. All right. So he's saying players can replace waymarks on their own during the fight, of course, but having a tool place them instantly. Sending the command through the server and the game's wrong. Please don't do this. We have taken actions on our side to prevent this from happening again. I will show you a bit more on the machine later. If this is the beginning of their Warden, which is, I don't know if that's still the name WoW uses, but for years Warden was always the anti-cheat program that WoW uses. It would be interesting to see the direction they go with this, because people think WoW just allows everything, and far from it. WoW bans people regularly. The things you see, like DPS meters, are embraced by WoW. They have an API built for that, but there are plenty of things that are against WoW TOS that you just don't hear about because Warden bans it.
That was a big one in Wrath. No, not Wrath. Mists. That was so bad. And a lot of the big guilds got hit with it too, because it was like all of the best food that you could have had to be from fishing. And so people would just like bot fish all day. And then they just went through a sweep and just like it was just a ridiculous ban hammer. And like, not ridiculous, it's the wrong term to use, but there was just a lot of people, like a lot of people.
I tried botting in, I guess it was Wrath, as the only time in my gaming career I've been interested in botting. And it was around, so they made, I think it was Wrath, so they made it to where the only way to be viable in PvP remotely was to have PvP gear. And if you went into PvP without PvP gear, you just died over and over. And it was like this 30-hour grind of just dying over and over. And so I botted a big chunk of that. Me and my brothers would play together, and then when we went to bed at night, we would run our bots. And I botted just long enough to get the gear. And as soon as I got the gear, I uninstalled the bot, and I didn't do it again. So I understand the desire. I've done it. I don't do it now. I felt very differently about cheating in games and botting in games than I do now. Now it's like I felt more like, okay, well, why are they doing it? Now it's like, no, they said don't do it, then don't do it. Like, it's really straightforward. Like, if I get pulled over for speeding now and get a ticket, I'm like, the idea of being mad about that doesn't even make sense to me. It's like, well, were you doing it? Yeah. Then why are we talking about this? Like, that was the agreed upon penalty. We all knew that. He's getting caught. What you're mad about?
No, I agree.
You did the thing.
Yeah.
Like, what? Oh, I was speeding. What did you receive for that? A speeding ticket. Like, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds logical.
It's like,
I don't know. I don't have any problem with there being parsers in games. And I think that there are a lot of things that stop toxicity in a game. Parsers is not a guaranteed cause of it. You don't have a live parser in Call of Duty. You don't have a live, wouldn't make sense to. You have a scoreboard. You don't have a lot, but it doesn't show you total damage done, doesn't show you accuracy mid-match. You don't have a parser in League of Legends or any MOBA or anything like that that's being shown on screen that's widely pervasive in the same way that it is on something like World of Warcraft. And those games have plenty toxic communities. Like, there's plenty of toxicity. If you cannot find toxicity in League of Legends, you are not looking hard enough.
Like, yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying about stuff. Like, it's not necessarily the in-game features or what third-party app you use. It's the people. It's not... If you surround yourself with like-minded people, you're not going to get that toxicity, in my opinion.
Starting in 5.2, you will not be able to place markers during a fight, because I guess what they're having is people are saying, where should I go? And somebody's just placing a marker.
But that's
so they're going to force you to chat, but then when you chat, anything you say can be harassment.
That's utilization of an in-game tool. How is that?
they're taking that away. Thanks, modders. Jeez Louise.
But what about different phases when you pop down to different rooms? I mean, like specifically Hades, like on the Hades fight.
Yeah.
I mean, there's what, 4 phases that you need to have different markers for?
Now they've been just talking about how they're like bringing on the hammer and changes. I'm literally going to highlight this because I think it's important for people to